Hey guys, Kyle Bascom here. Today we're going to be doing a suspension and brake diagnosis and system overview video on the W166 platform. To demonstrate that platform, we have with us today a 2013 ML 550 4MATIC, but the information that we discuss in this video is going to pertain to just about all 2012 to 2019 MLs, GLs, GLEs, and GLSs. So in terms of that 2012 to 2019 date range, one thing to note is the MLs started a little bit earlier than the GLs. So your 2012 MLs were your 166s. The GL came in 1 year later in 2013 as your 166 model. So when we're talking about what vehicles it pertains to, keep that in mind. So in terms of the brakes and suspension system on the W166, a lot of what we're looking at today is going to be a carryover from the previous generation 164 model, and where there are differences, I'm going to show you on the vehicle. In terms of what we have at the table here, I've got front and rear brake system components, control arm bushings, struts. These are all common failure items on this vehicle. What's much easier to do is for us to go over to the vehicle. I'll point out everything to you, show you what to look out for. So we're going to get started with that right now. All right, so we've got the wheel off the vehicle so that I can demonstrate all of the wear items in the suspension and brake system to you. Let's get started with the brake system. What you really want to be concerned with on a typical maintenance interval is the brake rotor and the brake pad. This is an ML 550. All of the 550s are what's called P31 package or sport models, so they all have the cross-drilled rotors. You're either going to have a cross-drilled rotor or a solid-face rotor. What you're looking for is an irregular lip or heavy grooving on the rotor. This one's actually not too bad. I've seen much worse. And when you run your finger across it, if it's like bumpy and wavy, it is time to replace this guy. When it comes to the brake pad, I've got a fresh pad here. I'm just going to kind of flip it inverse so you can see new pad thickness versus what's currently on the vehicle. When you get to the thickness that's about similar to the backing plate thickness, you're all done. You're at the service limit at that point. You are going to want to replace the pad and the rotor. Another instance where you're going to want to replace the pad and the rotor, even though we recommend that anytime you're maintaining your brake system, is if the inboard pad has worn all the way down to the backing plate. At that point, you've basically destroyed the rotor. You need to replace both. In terms of common intervals, every 40-ish thousand miles, you're probably going to be replacing both. When it comes to inspecting the pad thickness, the actual inspection window is in here. So you can see where you have your pad wear sensor. You can take a peek at how much pad material you have left. Or quick and dirty, what I like to do, you have your caliper, I don't know if you can see it, your sliding pin down here. If the visible area is like the thickness of my finger, I know it's time to start replacing everything. So that's it for the brake system. Now we're going to move on to the suspension components. All right, so when it comes to the suspension, you've got a double wishbone front suspension on all of these vehicles. If you've got a GL, GLS, one of those models, all of those had air suspension, so the strut's going to look a little bit different. You're not going to see the exposed coil spring. Most of your MLs and GLEs are steel suspension. There were some that were optioned with air. A good example is like an ML AMG model, had air, standard. In terms of wear components, if the body doesn't feel like the movements are controlled anymore, you're bobbing and swaying, it feels like a boat, that's not the way these vehicles are really supposed to drive, you're probably going to need to throw struts at it. Both front struts, you want to be replacing them at the same time. In terms of the most common wear items in the suspension, if we're looking at this bushing right here, I'll just grab a new one for you to compare it to. This is a fresh bushing. That's a worn bushing. This vehicle's got about 60,000 miles on it. At about 70,000 miles, that's when you're going to start replacing bushings. What might be more practical, depending on the equipment that you have in your shop or your garage, might be to replace this entire control arm. You do have the option to press out the bushings, so I've got the individual bushings here that, just for demonstration purposes, you can press out the bushing at the shock fork. This one is also deteriorated. The bushing over here can be pressed out. The ball joint over here, if you've got creaking noises from the front suspension, could be an indication of a ball joint failure. If you have air suspension, sometimes the air struts actually make creaking noises as well, so it could be that. And then lastly, you want to take a look at the integrity of your end link. The end link connects to the knuckle up here. That started to become more common at about the 2010 interval for a lot of Mercedes models. You've got a connection at the knuckle up here, which is like a ball joint connection, and then you have your rubber bushing down here. So inspect that. And then lastly, this is your front sway bar. Another potential source of like creaking or groaning noise. So you want to be inspecting that when you're inspecting your front suspension components. And then lastly, not as troublesome, but something you want to be looking at when you're inspecting your suspension is that upper control arm. That's the last one. That's the least troublesome component in this entire front suspension system. Now that we've looked at the front suspension, we're going to pop back to the rear of the vehicle, and I'll show you how that's set up. Now we're at the rear of the vehicle. What you'll notice with the brake rotor, unlike the front, this one's a solid face. It is not cross-drilled. Just a tip, if you have a 13 or newer with a solid face and you'd prefer the cross-drill just so you have the, the same front to rear, you can retrofit the disc from the 2012 models. It's a direct fit, plug and play, same dimensions, and that way you have cross-drilled front and rear. This rotor, you might be able to catch it on camera. This one's pretty wavy. This is end of life. This is service limit. I can feel a little bit of a lip on there as well. Just replace it. When it comes to pad thickness, which you'll notice the thickness of the new pad versus the existing one, this one's ready to hit that wear sensor. And when it does, you'll get the indicator in the instrument cluster. You'll also get the red brake lamp on the instrument cluster illuminated. So this one we're definitely gonna need to do the rear. We'll show you how to do that. In terms of the suspension, it's similar to most Mercedes 5 links, with the biggest difference being this lower arm isn't divorced. You don't have two arms. It is a single control arm. Similar to the front, you're going to inspect the bushings here and here, and your bushing at your rear shock absorber. If the ride feels uncontrolled in the rear, it is typically going to be your rear shock absorber. You are still going to want to look out for broken coil springs. Things like that do happen. One thing I didn't point out that I also want to mention is on these vehicles, sometimes the brake hard lines corrode and you will have a brake failure. So just something to think about in the life of the vehicle. Lastly, in terms of other wear items in this rear suspension, you are going to want to check out the articulation of the rear end links. This is your end link right here connected to your sway bar. And then lastly, take a look at the condition of your sway bar bushing. Might require a sway bar replacement if that is perished. Well, that's about it for wear items on your rear suspension and brakes. Now that we've gone over all of that, let's go back to the bench and wrap it up. All right, so now that we've gone over all of the suspension components and brake components on the W166 models, cannot stress enough that these brake and suspension components are controlling the weight of a massive vehicle. And if these components are worn, they really cannot control this vehicle safely. So when you notice a problem with your suspension or brakes, we urge you to handle it immediately. We have a ton of videos on how to perform your own brake system replacement, how to replace several of the components on your suspension system. We urge you to use the information that we provide in those videos. If you have any questions, be sure to leave them in the comments below, and also don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.